What is yoga? Continuing to consider some of the foundational ideas in the Indian system that yoga assumes a familiarity with. So we've mentioned the idea of practice and study being two wings of a bird. And we've considered very briefly the purushartha, the four aims of life in the Indian system. Artha, kama, dharma, moksha. Having a way of making a living and a way of enjoying life that is dharmic, that is in harmony with the well-being of the whole, that supports cohesion through the web of existence. And if we're able to live like that, we become freer, is the idea. Now, another thing that I'd like to highlight here in this section is the idea of, like, if we want to be empowered to explore practical yoga philosophy, it's good to know our ABC and our 1, 2, 3. So yoga 1, 2, 3. There's a very beautiful thing about yoga. Sometimes you can hear people say that yoga is a dualistic system because it works with the Sankhya model of reality. And in Sankhya we have Purusha, the enabling consciousness, and Prakriti, nature. And these are separate in the Sankhya model. However, while yoga works with this Sankhya model, yoga also goes beyond it. So yoga is a very special school of Indian philosophy because it can work with all the other schools. Many of the arts and science and disciplines of the Vedic system, they can be made into yogas. And yoga, it connects. So yoga is the connector. It's this school that connects and joins lots of other schools. So yoga 1. We've mentioned that yoga is about unity. Yoga is about bringing all the different parts into oneness, so we can come into a state of at-one-ment or attunement. And so yoga accepts that there is an underlying unity. There is a field in which we exist, and we are part of this field of conscious existence or consciousness. And if we bring ourselves into that state of oneness and cohesion, we can become part of that oneness. Now, some might say we recognize our place within that oneness, or we recognize that our capacity to experience is enabled by the underlying conscious existence. Others suggest that once we come to that state of recognition, we become totally integrated into that oneness. For me, these differences are not so important because they don't really affect how the practice works. Whether I believe, because right now it's just a belief, I don't know. I wake up in the morning and I do not see and experience myself and the external reality as one field of shimmering unity. I'm sorry, that's just not my existence. I experience duality. I experience myself and the rest of the world. And every day I feel slightly different. That being the case, I work with yoga, the practical school of philosophy, that also acknowledges the reality of duality, the reality of the world. It acknowledges black, white, day, night, up, down, cold, hot, expansion, contraction. And yoga is about balancing these pairs of opposites, bringing these different pairs of opposites into harmony, marrying them, if you like, so they can draw out each other's complementary potential. But yoga recognizes the reality of duality. But very, very importantly, and very beautifully to my mind, yoga doesn't stop there. Because yoga and the Indian system more broadly make it very, very clear that reality and nature, the realm of life and death, and these pairs of opposites like hot, cold, pleasure, pain, up, down, back, forth, in and out, expansion, contraction, all the rest of them, is not a binary reality. It's not black and white. It's a spectrum. And there are always many more than two ways of looking at any question or anything. Now, I grew up in the United Kingdom and I studied French and Italian when I went to university. And so I had some formation in writing essays in the European tradition. Now, when I studied French, the essay was called la dissertation. And we were taught that la dissertation est un genre. The essay is a genre, and we have to follow certain rules. And some of my French teachers, they were very forthright about this. You should have the thèse, the thesis, the antithèse, the antithesis, and then you do the synthèse, the synthesis. So thesis, antithesis, synthesis. So we consider one side of the argument, then we consider the other side of the argument, and then we synthesize them and make them into a whole, and we've done a very nice job of considering the issue. Great. We pat ourselves on the back and think we've looked at the question thoroughly. How tragic. 2 sides to one question, what a ridiculous idea. There are as many sides to every question as there are onlookers. There are infinite sides to every question. The Indian system, in its great majesty, its great practical wisdom, recognizes this. And so inherent to the Indian system is the magic number 3 is a magic number. Yes, it is. It's a magic number. It takes 3 legs to make a chair or to make a table stand. It takes 3 legs to make something stand. 2 is not enough. And 3, the magic number, reminds us, indicates, 3 literally means infinite. Infinite possibilities and permutations. And in the Indian system, we've mentioned the idea of Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha, the enabling consciousness. Prakriti, manifest nature. Manifest nature, the realm of birth and death, of duality. But the realm of birth and death, Prakriti, has 3 intrinsic qualities, known in Sanskrit as the 3 gunas. 3 gunas. And the 3 gunas are sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva, rajas, and tamas, or satguna, rajoguna, and tamoguna. And these 3 gunas are sometimes described as 3 interwoven threads of reality. Sat, this is from the Sanskrit root us, which is the verb to be. So sattva, we've mentioned the tva suffix already, it means having the quality of. So sattva literally means having the quality of existing. Sattva refers to the pure essence of a thing, its very existence. So everything that exists, it exists, so as its pure existence. But when something exists in Prakriti, in the realm of nature, in this dynamic realm of life and death and change and pulsation, expansion and contraction, it exists as its pure essence, but it also has a rajas. It's also subject to dynamism. Everything in the realm of nature is constantly changing. It's being born and dying. It's expansion, contraction. Even the mountains are born and they die. Of course, their lifespan is very long compared to that of us, but everything in manifest existence is living in this realm of pulsation, a dynamic reality. So everything that exists, sattva, as its pure essence, and it has rajas, as its susceptibility to change. It's changing. However, notwithstanding the fact that everything in existence is dynamic, once something has taken a certain form, have you noticed it has the tendency to stay in that certain form for some time? Everything also has tamoguna, the quality of inertia. So we go to bed in one form. The form we wake up the next morning has a lot in common with the form we went to bed the previous night. It's shifted, of course. There has been some change. But it also has a quality of inertia. And everything in existence has inertia. Have you noticed? So right now, for example, I'm recording this from my father's house in North Yorkshire, and the UK, like many countries around the world now, is in lockdown. And in recent weeks, many governments have issued decrees for people to stay at home and for many things to stop. But what I noticed happening in the yoga world, for example, everything had to stop, and then all of a sudden, hundreds, thousands of people said, "Oh, I'm moving the classes online." It was almost like, well, nature is, and I also, in my own way, continued my habit of inertia. I've been traveling a lot for so many years, and when things shut down in this country, I thought, when it looked like they were going to shut down, I went to another country where I thought it wouldn't shut down, but then it did, so here I am. But I saw people when this shutdown happened, and suddenly all these online classes, and of course I think that's wonderful that people are sharing in these ways that allow people to continue exploring. But it's like the inertia of doing, giving, working. This non-stop go, achieve, produce world. This is a habit. This way of operating and living that perhaps isn't necessarily always so dharmic, that isn't necessarily always so in balance, has a lot of inertia. And so in the current situation, perhaps there is this great opportunity to recalibrate our ways of working and our ways of being. And maybe the enforced slowdown, or the opportunity to slow down, is inviting us to reappraise the way that we live day to day. That's all to say that everything in its existence also has tamas, also has inertia. So, ultimately everything is one. However, once we come into the realm of nature, once we are born, we come into the breathing world. We come into the world of pulsation. Once anything comes into manifestation, not just sentient creatures who breathe, but also the mountains, also the trees. They also breathe, they also pulsate in their ways. Everything in manifest existence, from mineral through plant, animal, human life, we are all subject to dynamism and inertia. We all have our pure essence. Now these three gunas, sattva, the essential existence, rajas, dynamism, the inevitability of change, tamas, inertia, notwithstanding the inevitability of change, the way that things tend to maintain the forms or ways they're already established in, even though eventually they are bound to decay. Decay is also associated with tamas. They have that tendency to continue in the way that they're already established in. But the three gunas are also sometimes referred to, sattva, as purity and luminosity, because the essence of something that allows it to exist has a light. It's enabled by a consciousness, let's say. If there was no consciousness to allow it to exist or to be experienced, it wouldn't exist at all. So that sattva is that pure aspect of something. Rajas is energy, dynamism. So a rajasic behavior is one that demonstrates a lot of energy. So for example, ambitious behavior is sometimes called rajasic behavior. Tamas is more sloth. It's like just if you follow in the inertia, certain inertia, so when things are more like death and decay are associated with tamas. But all these three, they are useful for yoga. Yoga is about balance. So the idea is sattva, things which support pure or clear awareness, we're encouraging the yoga tradition to play to sattva. So if you wake up at 4 in the morning and you feel like meditating, meditate. Accept that invitation. If you feel like eating great, healthy, pure, fresh food, eat it. Anytime you feel a sattvic impulse, things that bring you more to that clear state, heed it, cultivate it. However, rajas and tamas can also be very useful for yoga practice. If you're feeling very sluggish, rajas, some get up and go, can be really helpful. And yoga is about transformation. So rajas is, we need to harness the capacity and the gift of that. Tamas, first step is half the journey. And we say this in India. And I think it's true. Once you start something, it's much easier. So with practices, once we start carving out positive habits, they generate their own momentum. And yoga practice is a self-validating path. when we're practicing yoga, we should feel more balance, more harmony, more integration. So naturally we want to keep at it. The key thing when we're starting a yoga practice is to remember why we're doing it, and to practice cultivating how we actually want to feel in life. So when I'm practicing, I want to invite balance, harmony, integration. So I take care not to confuse practicing yoga with just going to some technique that is my habit or my routine. It's really important to remember and recognize the difference between discipline and routine. So I have a friend who was a US Marine captain, served in Vietnam. He's now quite elderly, but we worked together. We were colleagues at a university in Thailand when I taught there in the early 2000s. And Bill, he's called. And Bill, in those years, gets up at 4 a.m., goes for a walk, does 100 push-ups, and then gets on with his day. And the way he spent his day was also full of discipline, but he said, that's not discipline. I get up at 4. What other time is there to get up? I'm a Marine. He always carried his wallet in a very in a waterproof plastic container. I'm a Marine. It's like, how else do you carry your wallet? You always got to be prepared. He says, this is not discipline, he said. These are just habits. This is just routine for me. Discipline and the real practice. And Bill's question was, where am I in this? And Bill was a seeker of truth. He said that philosophy saved him after the horrors that he lived through, and including killing many people in the Vietnam War, and witnessing many people being killed, and witnessing all types of horror, and being in situations where he wouldn't sleep for days, and just very, very extreme situations. He said that philosophy saved him, and so after that time he started studying philosophy, and including Indian philosophy, and he studied Sanskrit. His Sanskrit teacher was my first Sanskrit teacher, a wonderful lady in Thailand, Ajahn Tasani, a very senior teacher. She'd been teaching for decades when she started working with me. And Bill said that in his practice, his seeking of truth, the real trick was to keep asking that question, where am I in this? Things are going well, where am I in this? I'm feeling frustrated, where am I in this? I'm feeling whatever, where am I in this? What's the truth here really, is the way that Eric Schiffman, a contemporary yoga teacher, frames the essential question. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Where am I acting from? To have this type of inquiry is the real practice. So when I'm doing my technique, not to confuse just showing up for the technique with real practice. Just showing up for the technique is a great foundation. But then I need to work with the technique to inquire into the way I'm interfacing with and interacting with reality. So, yoga 1, 2, 3. Yoga is very beautiful because it admits the underlying oneness of all life and all existence. We're all part of this unified field of consciousness. But yoga also admits and recognizes the reality of duality. Nature, the realm of birth and death, is a realm of duality. Expansion, contraction, birth, death, up, down, dark, light, day, night, and so on. But it's not binary. Prakṛti is the realm of the gunas, of which there are 3. And because there are 3, it reminds us there are always infinite ways of looking at any question. And the yoga practitioner always remembers, I do not know. We have to maintain that spirit of inquiry, of openness. And that, from the yogic perspective, is the only realistic approach to the great mystery of life.